A few years ago, if you'd asked me what my life was going to look like, I probably would have pointed in a general direction. I wouldn't have given you a specific answer. Like most people, I had goals I was working towards, responsibilities that shaped my decisions, and a rough picture of where I thought the road might lead. But what I didn't realize was that many of the experiences that would eventually shape my life weren't even visible yet. They weren't part of the plan because I hadn't discovered them. And more importantly, I hadn't met the version of myself who would be interested in them. What I wouldn't have told you is that I would someday be sitting in front of a microphone recording a podcast. I wouldn't have told you I'd write a novel or that I'd spent countless hours building a bookstore, connecting readers with authors, or having conversations about stories, leadership, growth, and possibility. Not because those things sounded unrealistic, they simply weren't on the map. When I look back now, that's what fascinates me the most. Some of the experiences that have brought me the greatest joy, introduced me to incredible people, and taught me the most about myself didn't begin as goals. They weren't even part of my life plan. They all started as small curiosities, tiny detours, side quests. If you've ever played a video game, you know exactly what I mean. You're supposed to be saving the kingdom and defeating the villain, or completing some mission that's supposedly the entire point of the game. And then suddenly, you find yourself helping a stranger recover a lost item, exploring a cave that wasn't marked on the map, or following a trail that has absolutely nothing to do with the objective. From a strategic standpoint, it makes no sense. It slows you down. It distracts you. It pulls you away from where you're supposed to be going. But those are often the moments you remember most. The more I've thought about it, the more I've realized life works the same way. Some of the most meaningful chapters of our lives begin with something we almost ignored. A conversation we didn't expect to have. An invitation we almost declined. A hobby we tried on a whim. A road we weren't planning to take. Looking back, they seem significant, but in the moment, they simply felt interesting enough to explore. Welcome back to the Motivated Savages podcast. I'm Jody Savage, and lately I've been wondering how many of the most meaningful chapters of our lives begin in places we never intended to go. Most of us spend a lot of our time looking forward. We create plans and set goals. We make decisions based on where we think we're headed. And there's nothing wrong with that. Direction and purpose matter. Having a vision for your future matters. But if you ask someone to look backward over the last 10 or 20 years of their life, the experiences that shaped them most often weren't the ones they planned for. They weren't the milestones highlighted on the calendar or the achievements circled in red. More often than not, they were unexpected experiences that arrived quietly and changed everything. The more I think about that, the more I wonder if we've underestimated the importance of these moments. Not because they lead somewhere important, but because they reveal something important. They reveal parts of ourselves we didn't know were there. When we're young, most of us carry some picture of who we think we're going to become. Sometimes it's incredibly specific. We know the career we want, the life we hope to build, the milestones we expect to reach. Other times, it's less of a plan and more of a feeling. We simply have an idea of the person we're growing into. What's interesting isn't that those plans change. Of course they change. Life has a way of introducing variables we could never predict. What's interesting is how often the most meaningful parts of our lives emerge from places that weren't visible when we created that picture. Years ago, if you had shown me a snapshot of my life today, there are entire sections I never would have predicted. The podcast, the books, the bookstore, the conversations, the community. None of those things existed in the version of the future I imagined. It's not that I rejected them. I simply couldn't see them because I hadn't encountered them yet. That realization has made me wonder how many parts of ourselves remain undiscoverable simply because we haven't found the experience that reveal them. We often assume we know who we are, but perhaps there are pieces of ourselves still waiting for an introduction. One thing I've noticed is that many of the most meaningful chapters of my life don't begin with certainty. They begin with curiosity. The podcast started because I thought it might be interesting to share some ideas. Writing a novel started with a simple question about whether I could actually do it. Building a bookstore began with a curiosity about helping readers discover books differently. None of those things arrived with a guarantee that they would succeed. None of them came with a detailed roadmap explaining where they would lead. They simply looked interesting enough to explore. That's what side roads often are. They aren't obvious destinations. They're invitations. Small opportunities to step off the path for a moment to see what's there. Sometimes nothing comes from them, and sometimes they become entire chapters of our lives. The challenge is that the side roads rarely look important when you're standing at the entrance. They usually feel inefficient. Practical voices remind you that you already have enough to do. Responsibilities pull you back toward the highway. Yet curiosity has a strange way of whispering, "What if?" Imagine living in a house for 20 years before discovering a room you never knew existed. Not a room someone added, not a renovation. A room that had been there all along. You simply hadn't found the door yet. I've come to believe that many side quests work exactly that way. We often talk about experiences as though they create something new inside us. But what if many of them are simply revealing something that was already there? Maybe writing didn't create the storyteller. Maybe it introduced me to the storyteller. Maybe the bookstore didn't create the community builder. Maybe it revealed that part of me. Maybe the podcast didn't create a voice. Maybe it gave a voice a place to speak. There's something comforting about that idea because it suggests we're larger than we realize. It suggests there are still rooms inside all of us that remain unopened. Rooms filled with creativity and leadership, compassion, adventure, curiosity, and possibility. One reason side quests are easy to overlook is because we're taught to value achievement. Achievement is visible, it's measurable. It gives us something tangible to point at when someone asks how we're doing. Promotions, awards, accomplishments, milestones. Those things are easy to recognize. Discovery works different. You don't always know discovery is happening while it's happening. There isn't a trophy for uncovering a hidden passion. No one throws a celebration because you discovered a new side of yourself. Discovery often feels uncertain and unproductive while it's occurring. Yet when I look back on the experience that have shaped my life, what I remember isn't always what I achieved. It's what I discovered. I discovered I love telling stories. I discovered I enjoy creating things from nothing. I discovered I find meaning in connecting people with ideas, books, and possibilities. Those discoveries quietly changed the direction of my life in ways that many achievements never could. Now, a thought's been sitting with me lately. Somewhere out there is a version of me who never wrote a novel, a version who never started a podcast. Not because those things failed, because they were never explored. And the more I think about that, the more I realize all of us probably have versions of ourselves that never came into existence when curiosity goes unanswered. Not better versions, not worse versions, just different ones. Different discoveries, different stories, different rooms, different roads. We spend a lot of time trying to choose the right path. But maybe life isn't only about choosing correctly. Maybe it's also about being willing to explore occasionally. Maybe some of the most important things we'll ever learn about ourselves are waiting somewhere we never intended to go. One of the assumptions many people carry is that self-discovery belongs to youth, as though there's a point where we finally figure ourselves out and the exploration ends. I don't think that's true. In fact, the older I get, the less true it seems. What if there are still interests you haven't discovered? Talents you haven't explored? Passions you haven't uncovered? What if there are rooms inside you that remain unopened? What if there are roads you've never traveled because you've been busy walking the familiar ones? I find that incredibly hopeful. It means the story isn't finished. It means possibility still exists. It means there are still things left to discover. Not because you're incomplete, because discovery is never really complete. Now this week, I want to challenge you to spend $10 on curiosity. Not productivity, not responsibility, curiosity. Buy a used book you've never heard of. Visit a museum. Attend a local event. Try a hobby. Take someone interesting out for coffee. Start a small creative project. Follow an idea simply because it makes you wonder. Then ask yourself a different question. Don't ask, was it worth $10? Ask, what did it reveal? Because you never know which curiosity is actually a side quest. And you never know which side quest is about to introduce you to a part of yourself you've never met. When I look back over my life, very few of the experiences that shaped me arrived looking important. They arrived as curiosities, invitations, conversations, detours. Small opportunities that would have been easy to dismiss. At the time, they seemed so ordinary. And then later, I discovered that they were introducing me to parts of myself I hadn't met yet. Maybe that's the real gift of a side quest. Not where it leads, what it reveals. Because the main quest may get us where we're going, but the side quest often reveals who we're becoming. And if that's true, then perhaps the most exciting possibility of all is this. There may still be parts of you waiting to be discovered. I'm Jody Savage, and this is the Motivated Savages podcast. Live bold, ignite your path. That's the Savage way. If this message resonated, share it with someone who may have forgotten that curiosity still has something to teach them. And if you want to carry this message with you, check out our merch line at motivatedsavages.com. We've designed gear to remind you to live bold every day. Together, we're building the Savage community, a movement of people choosing purpose, growth, and bold living.